Not even 2 weeks in office, President Trump already scoring another victory for the U.S., this one against ISIS. He ordered a military airstrike against the terror group's leaders in Somalia. The president saying in part, "These killers who we found hiding in caves threatened the United States and our allies. The strikes destroyed the caves they live in and killed many terrorists without in any way harming civilians." Our next guest knows all about facing the war on terror. Retired U.S. Army Brigadier General Rob Spaulding joins us now. General, thank you for joining us. Looking at this happening, this is the first major military move under President Trump and DOD Secretary Hegseth. I know that a lot of intelligence is needed for an operation like this. Do you feel like this is something the Biden administration could have done or was sitting on, and the Trump administration came in and said, no, we're going to make this happen? Or do these things materialize so quickly this might not have been an option 2 weeks ago?
I do. I worked in the Biden administration. I worked in the Obama administration. I worked in the Trump administration. I saw the differences in the decision making. I think he's picking up where he left off with the Soleimani strike. And I think he's putting fear back into the equation. I think a lot of people think because he says he's about not having wars or starting wars, he won't be, use military action when it's appropriate. In this case, it was. I've seen, the National Security Council agonize over these decisions, and then what happens is these terrorists end up getting away. So it's good to see him actually making a quick decision to go after the threat.
Yes, sir. I just want to correct real quick. You're an Air Force Brigadier General, not Army. I think I read that.
Right.
I don't want to get yourself or me in trouble over that. I apologize to both services. But to move on with this, when we look at the Africa theater, a lot of people, I'd say a lot of civilians don't really know we're active there. As a Marine, I know you fear to go to Djibouti because it's really hot there. But even in North Africa, there's a lot going on, and there's a lot our military has to do. Tell us a little bit about the threat in the African theater.
Well, a lot of the terrorists have tried to migrate there. One of the things that they are trying to get away from is the ability for our intelligence assets to find them. It's also hard to get into some of those places in Africa just because we don't have good access many times. We face this in the B-2, which I flew. And so I think, we're getting better at finding these places. And when we find them, we're actually going after the people that are there. So, I think we're proving that there's really no place on earth that you can hide. And by taking action now, it prevents having a larger conflict, a bigger role for the military. It really cuts it off before it has a chance to metastasize.
No, absolutely. Proud Air Force General Rob Spaulding. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for your insight. Not even 2 weeks in office, President Trump already scoring another victory for the U.S., this one against ISIS. He ordered a military airstrike against the terrorist group's leaders in Somalia. The president saying in part, quote, "These killers who we found hiding in caves threatened the United States and our allies. The strikes destroyed the caves they live in and killed many terrorists without in any way harming civilians." Foreign policy expert Rebecca Heinrichs joins us now. Good morning, Rebecca.
Good morning.
So I look at this and I'm reading, there are people arguing that this was more of a show of force than a strategic move. Do you have any insight as to how important this airstrike was?
Well, I think it's important because President Trump decided to announce it. He announced that the United States did this. And then he also had a threat for anybody else who would threaten the United States. We will find you, he said, and we will kill you. And if you remember, Joey, during 2017, when President Trump came into office the first time, he designated down the authorities to military commanders to take out ISIS. He increased aerial bombings and uses of special forces. And the effect of that was the successful destruction of the ISIS caliphate within about a year, 95% of it. And so during the Biden administration, you've seen ISIS grow back. And so now the Trump administration has to come in, reestablish itself, get back in the game, and to say the United States is not going to tolerate this, and we're going to go back to destroying terrorists that threaten Americans.
I understand that ISIS as an entity has fingers all over the world, all over the region, in Africa and the Middle East. They don't always get along, but it was ISIS-K that we're told orchestrated the attacks in 2021 at the air base. And then we have an ISIS group here in Somalia. We also have other groups in Somalia. We also have an ISIS-inspired attack in New Orleans. Is this kind of messaging that President Trump, hey, I destroyed the caliphate my first time around. I'm going to destroy all of you this time around. Are those things connected? Is this being his first military action? Is that because of what happened in New Orleans and what happened at the airbase?
I think it's related, Joey, because the way it works is ISIS grows. As you said, you're always going to have terrorists, Islamic terrorists around the world. But what the United States can do is to destroy the caliphate, where they actually have essentially basing, where they grow, where they train, and then where they can recruit, because then they get stronger, and then they have more successful recruiting through the internet, because they show, would-be radicals that they're strong. And so the United States needs to destroy those physical caliphates where they exist. You mentioned in Africa, under the Biden administration, Niger and Chad were two countries where the United States was conducting counterterrorism operations, and we were kicked out under the Biden administration. And so it's harder to do. So now I think it is important for the Trump administration to say, we're going to destroy you where you are, and you're not going to have successful recruiting because we want to secure America's borders here at home and make sure Americans are safe.
Yeah, I won't lose a minute of sleep over some terrorists getting killed. I kind of like it. So, Rebecca Heinrichs, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.